Hello, welcome to this new video. I made this ring from wood and brass, and it didn't go very well.
So I had a quick look in my cabinet full of dead trees and dead brass. I think this piece of African blackwood and this piece of brass will look great together. I cut the wood to some more workable pieces. The plan is to make a wooden ring with brass liner in the middle, like this. To do that, I glued two pieces of wood with a piece of brass in the middle. After cleaning up the edges a little bit, I drilled a hole for the finger, or at least, I tried. The epoxy didn't really like the heat and the deformation caused by the drill bit, so I started again. But this time I drilled the hole in all separate pieces before gluing them together. Also, I drilled brass with a wood drill. I know.
I'm a sinner.
After sanding the surfaces, I glued the pieces together, and I used a pipe with the same diameter to align the holes correctly. Also, I used some Vaseline to make sure the pipe didn't stick to the glue. It seemed to work. For now. So, I used some sandpaper and a drill to enlarge the hole for fingering. Then I tried to remove most of the outer material using the belt sander, and guess what? It broke again. So now, mildly infuriated, I decided to change up my strategy. I bought some brass wire online so I could inlay it into the wood later. This way the ring is not built up from layers that like to separate. I continued by cutting the wood closer to its outer diameter. Using the belt sander, I also rounded out the rough corners. Then I used a drill to sand it to a final diameter, and most importantly, an even diameter. But that went a little too slow for my liking. So I flung together a sketchy lathe using a drill and a piece of steel. It was fun using this as a lathe, but apparently I was a little too excited. Because you won't believe, it broke. Again. Although I have to say, this was totally my fault. I went a little too thin. So, for the third time, I started over. Again, I cut away most of the material, I sanded away the rough edges, and used my death machine to get to the final diameter. And there we are, a wooden ring. Not broken. For the inlaying of the brass wire, I had to cut a groove in the middle of the ring. I started this with the drill lathe. To get to the final depth, I carefully filed the groove by hand. I made my life a little bit easier by pre-bending the wire to the right shape and cutting it to the correct length before gluing.
It looks something like this.
Using CA glue, I glued the wire firmly in place. And it worked. I just did a wire inlay. I was excited about it, so I went to show my mom. And then I dropped it on the floor. So the wood actually cracked, but I fixed it with a buttload of glue like a champ. It was like nothing happened at all. I filed the wire down and then used a drill and some sandpaper to get the wire nice and flush with the wood. The ring itself is finished, but I wanted to put some sort of ornament on top of it. My plan was to fold a flower with brass wire. I fiddled around a bit with the wire, but eventually I didn't really like the look of a folded flower. So I tried soldering a flower. To do that, I cut a few individual petals. I held them in place by sticking them on a piece of tape, and I soldered them together. After some struggling, I ended up with two pretty good looking flowers.
Nice.
Then came the moment I dreaded the most, the actual attaching of the flower to the ring. Now, there's no real good way of doing this. My plan is to drill a hole and hook the flower into the inside like this. That's also a good way of hiding the seam of the inlay. So I began drilling a hole. The inlay popped out. So I glued it back together and had to sand the whole thing for the third time up to a 7000 grit finish. At this point the ring broke like 5 times already, and I haven't even done the hardest part yet, which is properly attaching the flower to the ring. Alright, so finally I had a hole in a ring that was not broken. Also, I carved out a groove for the stem of the flower that's inside the ring. And I also prepared the flower by filing a little groove in the stem to fold it a little bit easier. Then it was time for the most stressful task of this build, gluing the flower in the correct position. And guess what? It actually went pretty well. So all that's left to do is to grind away the wire sticking out on the inside and sanding it to its final inner diameter. Now, I'm not actually making this ring for myself, so I can't really fit it around my finger. But even though it doesn't fit me, the ring is now practically done. The only thing it needs is a layer of oil to finish it off.
And there we go. Finally this ring is finished. Now, we did have a few setbacks, but in my opinion, the result is well worth it. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this project a little bit more than I did. If you have any feedback, please leave it in the comments below, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.
What?